Howdy! Welcome to Wild Curiosity, where we embark on journeys that spark your sense of wonder and lead you down trails of discovery through the natural world and beyond. I'm your host, Mandalynn, and in each episode, we'll delve into nature's mysteries, uncover hidden landscapes, and share captivating tales of the great outdoors. Whether you're a seasoned outdoor enthusiast or simply enchanted by the wonders of our planet, Wild Curiosity is your gateway to exploration and the thrill of the unknown. Hope you guys are doing well today, and thank you for joining me. Today, we are setting out to explore some secluded mountain towns, places where roads don't reach and life unfolds in harmony with the wilderness. From the hidden valleys of Washington state to the isolated communities of the Grand Canyon and beyond, we'll discover what it means to live off the grid, where modern life gives way to the untamed beauty of nature. So, grab your backpack and join me on this adventure as we uncover the secrets of these remote, roadless towns. Our first stop is the town of Stehekin, located on the far north end of Lake Chelan in Washington state. I actually chose this location because it was the catalyst for this entire episode. I backpacked to Stehekin on the Lakeshore Trail in May of 2023 with my three girlfriends, and it was such an amazing experience. So before we jump into the town of Stehekin, let's talk first about the lake it sits on, Lake Chelan. Lake Chelan is a narrow, 50.5-mile long lake in Chelan County, north central Washington state. It's an overdeepened lake and resembles a fjord with an average width of 1.3 miles. With a maximum depth of 1,486 feet, Lake Chelan is the third deepest lake in the United States, behind Crater Lake, the deepest, and Lake Tahoe, the second deepest. So, because of overdeepening, the sides of the lake drop steeply to its bottom. And overdeepening is a characteristic of basins and valleys eroded by glaciers, or in this case, the lake. All right, so let's get back to town and start with some history. The upper end of Lake Chelan was part of a major east west corridor for Native Americans for at least 9,000 years that connected communities on either side of the Cascade Range. In the 1800s, Native Americans in the Lake Chelan and Upper Skagit Valley referred to the pass between them as Stehekin, meaning the way through. Natives would store canoes at the head of the lake. White settlement began around 1875 when prospectors began searching for minerals in and around the Stehekin Valley. Mining activity increased in the 1800s with significant ore discoveries through 1891. A small gold rush occurred in the area. Difficulty accessing the community created problems for miners attempting to get their product to markets. Numerous proposals for wagon roads, railroads, and later vehicle highways were created in the late 19th century and early 20th, but none were brought to fruition, and the village remains disconnected from the North American road and railroad networks. William Buzzard homesteaded and cleared 160 acres and planted a small garden in 1889. This was sold in 1911 to the Buckner family, who developed it into a small farm and orchard that they operated into the 1940s. Today, visitors will find a community of around 80 people who thrive in the isolation of this beautiful valley. Although there are 15 miles of road in Stehekin, the fact that no roads come into the valley from the outside helps shape the character of this remarkable place and the thoughtful quality of the life that its residents share. I could go further into the history of Stehekin, but just for time's sake, I'm not going to go too deep. But I definitely recommend looking into it. Has a really rich culture and history, and is just like a really interesting place to learn about. But most of the residents do share a family heritage and history dating back to the first settling of the area by those involved in homesteading, mining, agriculture, and tourist services. Most visitors arrive by boat, a few come by air, but a surprising number hike into this remote valley, following the same cross mountain routes used for centuries by the Native Americans. And this is how I got there. Like I said, using the Lakeshore Trail, which is a scenic route that stretches about 17 miles along the edge of Lake Chelan. The trail starts at Prince Creek Campground and winds its way through the breathtaking landscapes with views of the lake, dense forests, and towering mountains. I won't go too deep into the details about the trail, but basically, you get a boat from the other end of Lake Chelan, and then you get dropped off at Prince Creek, and that's usually where people start. And then you hike, usually takes 2 days because a lot of people will break it up. I'm sure you could do it in one day if you really wanted to and started early enough. But there's a few great places along the way that you can stop and camp overnight. Some of my favorite parts of our trip to Stehekin was definitely renting bikes. You can rent bicycles and e-bikes and explore. We went to the bakery. That's usually at the top of everyone's list. Absolutely incredible. So good. Everything there is so good. I actually still joke with my friends every time we talk about Sahikin that all I want is a pesto croissant from there because that was probably my favorite thing. But yeah, I still dream about that pesto pastry, especially after you hike all day. Going to see Rainbow Falls, it's a huge waterfall, super beautiful, just gushing when we went in May. We also went to Buckner Orchards, which was really cool to see the orchards and check out the old homestead. Another great place that we really enjoyed visiting while we were there was the garden. It is a plot of land that this man named Carl owns, and it's a really cool story. He actually came to the Stehekin Valley via the Pacific Crest Trail in 1975, and he fell in love with it and came back and bought land in 1978, 6 acres and an acre with an organic garden. He was such a cool guy. He doesn't have shoes on or didn't when we were there. And he had a lot of Tibetan relics and decor. That was his vibe, very zen and relaxed. And so definitely go check that out and support him. We did buy some of his goat cheese and it was so good. We actually later that evening sat on the dock next to the water, watched the sunset, and ate some goat cheese with salami that one of my friends brought in and some of those crackers. Speaking of the PCT, this is a common stop for through hikers that are traveling on the Pacific Crest Trail. It's about an 18-mile hike to get from the PCT to Stehekin, and then after you get to the trailhead, you can actually get a shuttle. They have these really cool red shuttle buses, and they will cart you to and from town. This was a great stop for the beauty, but not really for restocking, so just a little heads up. It is also on Section K of the PCT, which is said to be one of the most grueling and hard sections. I think there's close to 25 or 26,000 feet of elevation gain, and then about the same in elevation loss. So a lot of ups and a lot of downs. It's a pretty grueling trek, this part. I think the only other part that is said to be as hard is the John Muir Trail in California. Lastly, in Stehekin, I just want to talk about the several forest fires that they have experienced that have endangered the town. I didn't mention it before, but this is in Eastern Washington, which Eastern Washington is nothing like the pictures you see online or on Instagram. That's usually deep in the Cascades or Western Washington, where it's really rainy and wet, like Seattle. But this is Eastern Washington, where things are very dry. When we were there, I mean, you could have just totally envisioned the place going up in flames. Like everything's just dry and dusty and, just thirsty. The forest is very thirsty. So, Stehekin has experienced several forest fires that have endangered the town, including in 93, 2006, and 2015. An evacuation order urging Stehekin residents to leave was issued in late July 2024 during the Pioneer Fire. I remember seeing this on the news. Like, I think only half of the town actually evacuated and the other half stayed and fought the fire. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. There was no injuries and they saved all of the buildings. The town's fine. And I think they just reopened this August. So glad everybody's okay. All right. So I think it is time to transition to our next stop. And actually, we don't have to go too far to get there. The next place that we're going to visit is called Holden Village. Holden Village sits about 18 miles south of Stehekin. And similarly, you can only reach it by boat or by hiking. I found out about Holden on our way back after we were picked up by the boat in Stehekin and on our, I think it's 2 hour ride back to our cars. We stopped along the way and picked up a couple people at the Holden Village dock. When they got on, we asked them a couple questions and they said that they had been at a retreat center there, and then that just totally sparked my interest, and I really couldn't wait to get home to figure out what the heck it was. Holden Village, located deep in Washington's North Cascades, began as a copper mining town in 1896, discovered by prospector James Henry Holden. Although Holden staked claims with significant copper deposits, the mine didn't reach full production until the Howe Sound Mining Company took over in 1938. Over its lifespan, the mine produced a significant amount of copper, gold, silver, and zinc. The Holden mine was actually the highest producing copper mine in Washington state for almost 20 years. By 1957, the mine closed due to declining metal prices, leaving Holden a ghost town. So, after about 3 years of sitting vacant, in 1960, the Lutheran Bible Institute of Seattle acquired the abandoned mining town and transformed it into the Holden Village, a year round Christian retreat center. Today, Holden Village is a thriving community focused on spiritual renewal, environmental stewardship, and education. It remains accessible only by boat across Lake Chelan and a rugged 12-mile bus ride, attracting thousands of visitors annually for retreats, workshops, and volunteer opportunities. The village has endured various challenges, including environmental restoration efforts following its mining past and wildfires. Despite these, Holden Village continues to thrive, driven by a strong sense of community and the spirit of adventure that has defined the area since its early days. So, yeah, quite the difference from the rough and crazy mining town it used to be to become a retreat center for Christians. So, I just thought that was really interesting. I found this really funny thing, and after talking to a few friends about it, I actually know a couple people that have been there. And so, this little funny extra, toasting the legends of the mine on Lake Chelan in the late 1930s, the professional women who had served the construction workers at the Grand Coulee Dam moved into the vacant Edgemont Hotel on the shores of Lake Chelan. You guys already know where this is going. Located just a few miles by water from Lucerne, the hotel became a brothel, serving the miners at the booming Holden mine. The easiest and fastest way from Holden to the brothel was to descend the steep 11 miles down to the shore and then go up the lake by rowboat. The operation was not in existence for long before the building spontaneously burned down. However, lore has it that one enterprising local who lived in a town across the lake started a successful rowboat taxi service to the brothel. The legend of this hardy entrepreneur is celebrated by a local award winning winery named Hard Row to Hoe, which serves fun and delicious wine across the lake on the north shore of Lake Chelan. Always a good time, Hard Row to Hoe serves wine such as Good in Bed sparkling wine and Shameless Hussy Rosé. They even provide a rowboat and boas for photo ops. And I just thought that was so funny and cool that they have a whole entire wine company based off of this guy that would row dudes from one end of the lake to the other so they could go to this brothel. Pretty sick. All right, friends, it's time to pack up and head out to our next destination and leave the Cascades behind. You will probably want to shed some layers and bring a hat. And don't forget the water either, because we're headed south to the Grand Canyon in Arizona. Welcome to Havasupai. Imagine hiking down into the heart of the Grand Canyon with nothing but towering red walls around you. And then, after hours of trekking, you hear it, the rush of water. And it's not just any water, it's this vibrant, otherworldly shade of turquoise, crashing over Havasu Falls, pooling into crystal clear basins below. This is Supai, the home of the Havasupai people, and it's one of the most remote places in the United States. For over 1,000 years, the remote village of Supai, Arizona, located 8 miles hike below the rim of the Grand Canyon, has been home to the Havasu Baja people, or the people of the blue-green waters, or as they are known today, the Havasupai tribe. Just above the village, a hidden limestone aquifer gushes forth the life-sustaining blue-green waters that have nourished the fields of corn, squash, and beans, which have allowed the Havasu Baja to thrive living in the harsh desert landscape deep in the Grand Canyon for centuries. This remoteness creates many obstacles for residents and visitors alike. The United States Postal Service office in Supai transports all mail in and out of the canyon by mule train. This is the only place in the United States where mail is delivered by mule and has been the case since the 1930s. The reservation was established in 1880, but in 1919, when the Grand Canyon became a national park, the U.S. government forced the Havasupai tribe off of much of their ancestral land. For decades, they fought to reclaim their home. It wasn't until 1975 that a large portion of their land was returned, allowing the Havasupai to continue their way of life in the canyon. The tribe's reservation today consists of a little more than 188,000 acres of canyon land and broken plateaus abutting the western edge of the Grand Canyon's south rim. This reservation is a dry reservation, and so no alcohol or drugs are permitted at all, including like the trailhead where you start at the very top and the entire area of camping, everything like that. And I took a little snippet from this website and it says possession, distribution, or consumption of alcohol anywhere within the boundaries of the Havasupai Reservation, which also includes the Hilltop Trailhead parking area, is a tribal and federal crime punishable by up to 1 year of imprisonment. So leave your goodies at home, friends. I would love to visit one day. If you guys get a chance, Google some pictures if you've never heard of it. It's insane. The color of the water is so crazy. And I guess that is due to a high concentration of calcium carbonate and magnesium. And that's what gives it its iconic color. You cannot day hike to this place. It has to be for overnight and you have to stay for at least 3 nights. And it ain't cheap. The current cost of a campground permit is $455 per person for 3 nights. If you would like to stay in the Havasupai Lodge, each room sleeps up to 4 people, and the cost is $2,277 per room for 3 nights. So, yeah, you can't just hike down there to see all of this amazing stuff. Like, you got to pay to play. There is this entire permitting system that I'm not really going to go into right now, but there's tons of information online through the Havasupai Reservation website. And yeah, they usually open in February. They release 100 permits per day, but they sell out super quick. In 2024, the tourism office began offering a pre-sale option where visitors can have early access to purchase tickets for an additional $15 per permit. I actually listened to a podcast and they did that and they said it worked out really great. And so I think that reservations and permitting is actually getting a lot easier over the years. So that's cool. So the Havasupai Trail, the 8 mile trail that gets you to Supai, begins at the Hualapai Hilltop Trailhead. The trailhead is in a remote location, so be sure to gas up before you go. In order to hike there, you do the first 8 miles to Supai, and people recommend, especially if you're there in the warmer months, start hiking early, like when it's dark out. Bring a headlamp, start as many hours as you can or miles as you can in the dark because once the sun hits, there's not very much relief until you get to the bottom. There's also no water along the way. So you have to pack, I think they recommend a gallon or 4 liters of water on your trek down. Rattlesnakes are common in the canyon, so always stay alert. The mules will also run you over, so be sure to watch out for them and step to the side on the trail to let them pass. Mules have the right of way. Also, clip your toenails when you're going downhill. Your toes hit the front of your shoes, and you probably don't want any toenails to be missing when you get down there. The trail back up will obviously be more challenging. It is uphill for the first 2 miles from the campground to the village, and the last mile or so of switchbacks is pretty tough. The average hiking time is 4 to 5 hours. If you're nervous about the hike, there is an option to take a helicopter in and out. And I couldn't believe this when I saw this, but the cost is $100 per person per trip, which I don't know, it's a friggin' helicopter, so I feel like $100 per person isn't really that bad, but it comes with a caveat. So you cannot reserve the helicopter in advance and it does not run consistently every day. The locals also get priority and there is no guarantee that you will be able to secure a seat, but it is worth looking into if you're really dying. Another option that will help make the hike a little easier is to reserve a mule to carry your packs. The cost is $400 round trip, and they can carry 4 bags with a maximum weight of 32 pounds per bag. Once you get to Supai at the bottom, you can rest up, get a snack, check out the cafe or the store, and maybe see the museum, and then get ready for your next 2 miles to the campground. So in total, you're going to be hiking 10 miles on day one to get to the campground. Depending on what campgrounds were available and which ones you get, that can also make your journey a little longer. In Supai, there is a cafe, post office, and a store. A campground site is available near the gorgeous waterfalls 2 miles north of Supai Village. Camping elsewhere is prohibited. Havasupai Lodge offers first class accommodations in its 24-unit lodge. The Havasupai Tribal Museum offers tribal crafts and displays photographs. There's a variety of day hikes you can do. There's 4 waterfalls in Havasupai: Navajo, Havasu, Mooney, and Beaver. So one of the ones I mentioned is Mooney Falls, and it's the 4th main waterfall in the canyon. And I just thought this was an interesting story about its name. So it was named after D.W. James Mooney, a miner who in 1882, according to his companions, decided to mine the area near Havasu Falls for minerals. The group then decided to try Mooney Falls. One of his companions was injured, so James Mooney decided to try to climb up the falls with his companion tied to his back and subsequently fell to his death. That's crazy. Helping his friend out. It doesn't say anything about his friend, but I would assume if he died, his friend probably died too if they were tied together, but who knows? One of the hikes that looked really cool to me that you could day hike, but it sounds so strenuous and hard, is to the confluence. So you basically hike 16.5 miles total. So probably not the best to do the day right after you get there. Maybe the middle day or something when you've rested up a little bit more, and you would wanna start, like, early, like 3 AM probably. But it is a strenuous hike on an unmarked, unmaintained trail, 16.5 miles round trip with a LE gain of 2,975 feet. Let's just say 3,000 LE gain. In the blog that I read, this girl said that they crossed the river 10 times one way, so obviously you cross 20 times. So that might be good for if it's really hot out, but as my friends like to call me blister sister, I think I'm not really sure if that would be the smartest thing for me to do unless I had sandals or Tevas or something to change into. You end up hiking to the actual meeting spot of the Havasu Creek and the Colorado River. You can see the mixing because it's like the normal kind of dingy water, the Colorado, and then the Havasu water, the turquoise blue, like the actual confluence, hence the name of the 2 mixing together. And it's so sick looking. Like, definitely look up a picture of that. I feel like if you were there, it would be worth it. It might suck super bad the entire time. I'd probably die and complain, but later on, I'd be like, "Fuck yeah, I did that." So on Thursday, August 22nd, 2024, there was a devastating flash flood. 1 person dead and more than 100 Havasupai residents and tourists were stranded. Thankfully, they were all rescued in an emergency response that included the Arizona National Guard, the county sheriff's office, and the National Park Service and tribal officials. The flood caused significant damage to hiking trails, campgrounds, and tribal buildings, leading the Havasupai Tribal Council to close the area. The one death was a girl, 33, Chenoa Nickerson of Gilbert, Arizona. She was swept away in the flash flood. And that Sunday, her family reported that her body was finally found 19 miles downriver in the Colorado, and she had actually been hiking and was at the confluence when the flash flood happened. So she was at the place where the 2 rivers meet, and she was swept into the Colorado. So super sad, and sending healing and loving vibes out to her family and her loved ones, especially her husband who she was hiking with that day. So really unfortunate. And since that event happened, Havasupai's been closed. They finally released a reopening announcement on the 29th of August. The campground and lodge will remain closed through September 30th, 2024, while the tribe recovers from the recent major flood event. I am glad that no one else was harmed and wish them the best in rebuilding and cleaning up the place. This isn't the first time the Havasupai have dealt with floods, and it likely won't be their last. Their resilience in the face of nature's unpredictability is a testament to their strength and adaptability. So, while we might dream of visiting Havasupai for its breathtaking beauty, we can't forget that for the people who live there, isolation is a daily reality. It shapes everything, from their traditions to their struggles. And it's that same remoteness that has kept Havasupai both protected and vulnerable. As we leave the desert canyons behind, let's head north, way north, where the isolation takes on a whole new meaning. We find ourselves in a town perched on the edge of the Bering Sea, where the land meets an unforgiving wilderness. The landscape here is wide open with vast stretches of tundra and icy waters that seem to stretch endlessly into the distance. Bundle up, because we are in the small, rugged town of Nome, Alaska. Life in Nome feels like it's at the very edge of the world, where the cold wind whips across the frozen ground and the isolation is palpable. The only way in or out is by air or sea, and even then, those options can be limited, especially during the long winter months. The city is located on the southern Seward Peninsula coast within the Norton Sound of the Bering Sea. It had a population of 3,699 recorded residents in the 2020 census. Nome was incorporated on April 9, 1901, and it was once the most populous city in Alaska. Nome actually does have a road system, but it's made up of 3 gravel highways that wind through the wilderness. These highways are only passable during the summer and offer scenic views of tundra, mountains, coastline, rivers, and valleys. And even though there's 3 highways, they don't actually go to other destinations or other cities. I think one of them goes to a nearby town. But yeah, in prehistory, Nome was the home of the Inupiat natives. Hopefully, I am saying it correctly. The area came to Western attention in 1898 when 3 Nordic Americans discovered gold on the ocean shores of Nome, prompting the Nome Gold Rush. Within a year, the city went from non existent to a population of some 10,000. Gold mining continued to attract settlers into the early 1900s, but the city's population had fallen considerably by 1910. A series of fires and violent storms destroyed most of Nome's Gold Rush era buildings between 1905 and 1974. So, Nome's history is, like many other frontier towns, deeply tied to a rush of gold. Thousands of people poured into this remote corner of Alaska hoping to strike it rich, and while many left empty handed, Nome still stands, a testament to the people who were determined to carve out a life in one of the harshest environments on Earth. In the winter of 1925, a diphtheria outbreak raged among the Alaskan natives in the Nome area. Fierce, territory-wide blizzard conditions prevented the delivery of a life-saving diphtheria antitoxin serum by airplane from Anchorage. A relay of dog sled teams was organized to deliver the serum, which was successfully led by Balto and Togo. Today, the Iditarod dog sled race follows the same route they took and ends in Nome. It took 20 mushers and about 150 sled dogs across the 674 miles in 5.5 days, saving the small town of Nome and the surrounding communities from a developing epidemic of diphtheria. Both the mushers and their dogs were portrayed as heroes in the newly popular medium of radio and received headline coverage in newspapers across the United States. Balto, the lead sled dog on the final stretch into Nome, became the most famous canine celebrity of the era, and his statue is a popular tourist attraction in both New York City Central Park and downtown Anchorage, Alaska. But it was Togo's team which covered much of the most dangerous parts of the route and ran the furthest. Togo's team covered 261 miles, while Balto's team ran 55. The publicity also helped spur an inoculation campaign in the US, which dramatically reduced the threat of the disease. The serum run, which they also call the Great Race of Mercy, and they call it the Serum Run. But now it is Iditarod National Historic Trail. So kind of sad that Balto got all of the glory because it sounds like Togo's the real hero here. It's such a crazy history and just what a wild ride that these mushers and dogs went through. I didn't really look into Balto, but I did look into Togo, and kind of interesting to find out that he is stuffed and displayed at the Iditarod Trail Headquarters Museum in Wasilla, Alaska, which is actually where my grandpa lives. Hi, Grandpa Ron. His skeleton is mounted separately and in the possession of the Peabody Museum of Natural History. So, pretty famous doggy. Now, in the 21st century, Nome's economy remains based around gold mining, which is now mostly carried out offshore. This is where filming of Bering Sea Gold on Discovery Channel is filmed. And I have watched quite a few episodes of that. They dredge for gold there. And then they also do under the ice Bering Sea Gold. And that is in the springtime when they're actually breaking through the ice and diving down there. So pretty gnarly. I don't know. Those are kind of some of my favorite shows, the gold rush shows. The city of Nome also claims to be the home of the world's largest gold pan, although this claim has been disputed by the Canadian city of Quesnel, British Columbia. I thought that was funny. I'd love to see the world's largest gold pan, or both of them. I don't know. Well, the time has come to wrap up our first adventure, you guys. Together, we've wandered through the Cascades, descended into the depths of the Grand Canyon, and journeyed far north to the edge of the Arctic. Each of these places tells a story, one shaped by its isolation and the people who navigate that remoteness every day. They remind us that even in today's fast paced, connected world, there are still corners of the earth where the journey itself is a true adventure. And the truth is, we've only scratched the surface. There are countless other places around the world where roads don't reach, hidden villages tucked into mountains, islands cut off by oceans, and wild landscapes where you can only arrive on foot or by horse. We could spend hours more exploring these remote destinations, each with its own history, legends, and challenges, but I'll leave those stories for another day. For now, thanks for coming on this journey. I hope it sparks some of your own sense of wonder and curiosity, because there's so much out there waiting to be discovered. Until then, stay curious, explore the wild, and remember, the adventure never ends. I'm Mandalynn. Thanks for joining me.